Forget the polite applause and the quiet aristocratic atmosphere you usually expect at a Grand Slam. What is happening in Paris right now is completely shattering the unspoken rules of Roland Garros history, and it has French tournament officials entirely stunned. Picture this scene right outside the main stadium. You are walking past the traditionally quiet Court 4. Suddenly you hear a deafening roar. Thousands of passionate fans draped in the vibrant blue and red of the Philippine flag are packing every single inch of the walkways. They are chanting and cheering so loudly that you would think a Grand Slam final is happening right there on a side practice court. The local security personnel are completely overwhelmed and scrambling for control. These guards are used to managing massive crowds for established legends like Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, and Carlos Alcaraz. Yet right now they look entirely confused by this massive sea of humanity. All these people have traveled from across Europe and the world just to catch a glimpse of a simple practice session. The person they are desperate to see is not a multi-time Grand Slam champion. She is a 20-year-old girl who just recently broke into the top 50 rankings of the WTA Tour. Her name is Eala. The sheer scale of this massive crowd makes her feel less like a standard tennis player and more like a global pop icon, making a rare public appearance. People are waiting for hours in the damp Paris weather just to watch her hit forehands against a hitting partner. This is a cultural phenomenon happening in real time. It is a moment that is forcing the international sports media to scramble for answers and rethink everything they know about tennis fandom. How does a young woman from Southeast Asia, a region that has historically been a complete afterthought in the global tennis ecosystem, suddenly command the kind of psychological power that can completely hijack a French Grand Slam? The answer is not just about a good tennis swing or raw athletic talent. To understand why Eala is currently rewriting the global tennis hierarchy and drawing crowds that rival the biggest names in the sport, we have to travel back in time to a ruthless decision made when she was only 12 years old. At 12 years old, most kids are just trying to figure out middle school homework and how to spend their weekend with friends. Eala made a choice that severed every safety net she had ever known. She packed her bags and left the warm familiarity of her home in Manila. She flew halfway across the world by herself to step into the most grueling tennis crucible on the planet, the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain. The psychological weight of that transition is staggering when you really stop and think about it. She traded a normal childhood for a life of intense isolation and relentless physical demands in a foreign country. The academy does not just teach you how to hit a tennis ball over a net. It completely rewires your athletic DNA according to the ironclad philosophy of Rafael Nadal himself. That philosophy is brutally simple but incredibly difficult to endure. Greatness is never found in comfort. You have to learn how to survive deep physical pain and mental exhaustion long before you ever get to play under the stadium lights. They teach you that the real match starts when your lungs are burning, your legs feel like heavy lead, and your mind is begging you to stop. Alex absorbed this strict mindset every single day. She built an armor of discipline that helped her eventually capture a junior US Open championship. She proved she was the best young prospect in the world. But the jump from dominating junior tournaments to surviving the professional WTA Tour is an absolute graveyard of broken dreams for many young prodigies. The professional circuit does not care about what you did as a teenager. You go from being the biggest star in the junior locker room to facing grown women who have been battling on the pro tour for a decade. For Alex, the stakes were infinitely higher. She was not just playing for her own career survival anymore. She was carrying the crushing expectations of over 100 million people back in the Philippines. Every time she stepped onto the court, she felt the heavy gaze of a nation desperate for global sporting validation. Overseas workers and immigrants from all over the world poured all their hopes into her racket, traveling hundreds of miles just to watch her hit a ball. The transition was anything but smooth. The professional tour is a lonely and unforgiving place where teenage hype means absolutely nothing to veteran opponents who are fighting for their own livelihoods. The immense pressure of being a national icon while trying to master the immense physical leap to the pro level pushed her to the absolute limit. She was fighting a massive two-front war. One side was the grueling physical reality of professional tennis, and the other was the overwhelming psychological burden of national representation. If you find yourself deeply moved by the insane mental toughness it takes for a young kid to leave everything behind and carry the massive weight of a nation on her shoulders, you are exactly the kind of viewer who understands the true depth of these underdog stories. Join our channel community right now by subscribing so we can keep bringing you these deep dives into the minds of the greatest rising athletes in the world. Yet all that mental conditioning and Spartan training at the Nadal Academy is only theory until it gets tested in the real world. And the most brutal test imaginable was waiting for her on the unforgiving red clay courts of Europe, where her entire career trajectory was about to hit a massive wall of doubt. The professional WTA tour has no room for junior delusions. For Alex Eala, the European clay court swing this spring quickly turned into a brutal psychological exam as early defeats began to multiply. Let us talk about the specific mechanics of European clay and why it is the ultimate graveyard for aggressive young players. The red dirt acts like a giant sponge. It absorbs the speed of the ball and forces players into exhausting physical rallies that test their lungs just as much as their racket skills. Alex built her entire game around explosive tempo and hitting massive winners on fast surfaces. Taking that style onto clay is like trying to drive a sports car through deep mud. The engine just stalls. Her footwork was constantly challenged as she tried to master the delicate art of sliding into her shots. The transition was incredibly painful to watch during those early tournaments. You could literally see the frustration building in her eyes during the matches in Stuttgart and Linz. She was hitting the ball with incredible force, but her opponents were just comfortably sliding across the baseline and returning everything she threw at them. The devastating loss to Alexandra Aliassime in Strasbourg was the absolute breaking point. It highlighted a severe lack of tactical patience. The media jumped on this immediately. Analysts began dissecting her every mistake on national television. They asked brutal questions. Does she actually have a backup plan when her power game fails? Is she destined to be a one-dimensional player who can only succeed on fast, hard courts? The media narrative became incredibly toxic during this period. Sports journalists love a rising star, but they love a falling star even more. They started comparing her to other prodigies who burned out before their 21st birthdays. They questioned whether the intense training methods at the Nadal Academy had actually piqued her physical development too early. While she was taking beatings on the slow red dirt, she was fighting a massive internal battle regarding her sudden fame. Imagine being 20 years old and trying to process the fact that thousands of strangers are tracking your every move. She entered a state of complete denial. The pressure was suffocating. Let us look at a specific fan named Lidin Barcila, who actually traveled all the way from Germany to Paris. He stood outside in the freezing rain for 4 straight hours just hoping to see Alex walk out of a practice facility. That level of fan devotion is beautiful, but it is also terrifying for the athlete carrying those expectations. Every missed forehand feels like letting down an entire global diaspora. The psychological burden of national representation is incredibly heavy. When a French or American player loses a match, they just go back to the hotel and prepare for the next tournament. When Alex loses a match, it feels like a moment of national mourning for the Philippines. That is an insane level of pressure for a young kid trying to figure out her own identity. She had to learn how to manage this overwhelming wave of love before it entirely crushed her spirit. She was trapped in a vicious cycle of high public expectation and low personal performance. Every time she stepped onto the red clay, she felt the heavy eyes of the world watching her struggle to adapt. The narrative completely shifted from a rising superstar to a struggling prospect who could not handle the bright lights of the professional circuit. When the darkness of doubt reaches its absolute lowest point and everyone believes you are just a heavily promoted social media star, the universe sometimes offers one final lifeline. For Alex, that lifeline came in the form of a wildcard entry that set the stage for an unimaginable plot twist. Absolutely nobody in the professional tennis world could have properly prepared their minds for the total earthquake that happened at the Miami Open. The Miami tournament is affectionately known as the fifth Grand Slam because the humidity is suffocating and the pressure is completely relentless. Alex entered the event ranked entirely outside the top 40, and she only got in because tournament organizers handed her a wild card. The experts expected her to play 1 or 2 matches and quietly pack her bags. Nobody paid attention to her practice sessions. She was practically invisible to the American media establishment. But the moment the tournament began, she walked onto the hard courts and unleashed total devastation on the established order of the WTA. She tore through the draw with an absolute vengeance. She did not just win matches against average players, she actively hunted down and eliminated multiple Grand Slam champions. She played with a terrifying sense of urgency as if she had absolutely nothing left to lose. The defining moment of the entire season happened when she stepped across the net to face the ultimate boss of women tennis, the world number one, Iga Swiatek. Swiatek is a defensive genius who mentally breaks her opponents before they even step onto the court. The analysts predicted a swift and painless victory for the reigning queen of tennis. The stadium was completely silent as the young Filipino underdog aggressively dismantled the best player on the planet. Alex stepped onto the stadium court and refused to blink. She matched Iga shot for shot. She hit massive passing shots down the line and dictated the tempo of the entire match. When Alex secured the final point to win the match and reach the semifinals, the stadium erupted in absolute disbelief. The victory was a massive explosion of relief and pure catharsis. All the doubts from the clay court season evaporated into the humid Florida air. She violently proved she was a legitimate threat to the tennis elite and not just a regional curiosity. When a 20-year-old wildcard completely destroys the world, number one, it changes the entire landscape of the sport. Did you actually see that Miami upset coming? Or did you think Swiatek was going to crush her easily like the rest of the media predicted? Drop your honest reactions in the comments right now because I want to know if anyone actually predicted this massive turning point before it happened. That monumental victory over Iga Swiatek completely unlocked her true potential. She finally believed she belonged at the absolute top of the sport. The momentum from Miami triggered a terrifying run of dominance across different surfaces. She transitioned to the grass courts and battled through the qualifying rounds at Eastbourne. Grass courts require incredibly low court positioning and rapid reaction times. Many young players completely fail to adapt their footwork to the slippery surface. Alex, however, looked like she had been playing on grass her entire life. She used her massive forehand to push her opponents deep behind the baseline and then executed perfect drop shots to finish the points. She strung together 6 consecutive victories to reach her first ever WTA final. The crowds in England fell in love with her fearless style of play. She followed that incredible performance by flying back across the Atlantic to Mexico and capturing the prestigious WTA 125 title in Guadalajara. She dominated the field in Mexico and showed a new level of emotional maturity. The Mexican fans embraced her passionate energy and treated her like a local hero. She was rapidly becoming a global icon who could command a crowd on any continent and on any surface. Her rise continued straight into the early 2026 season with a massive semi-final run at the ASB Classic in Auckland. Every single time she stepped onto the court, she played with the aggressive confidence of a seasoned veteran. The historical significance of these victories cannot be overstated. She officially broke through the glass ceiling and became the first tennis player from the Philippines in the entire history of the sport to enter the WTA Top 50. She eventually climbed to a career-high ranking of world number 38. She silenced every single critic who called her a fluke. She validated every hour of pain she endured back at the Nadal Academy. She transformed all the toxic pressure into pure athletic fuel. The breakthrough in Miami completely transformed Alex Eala from a lone, isolated phenomenon into a powerful beacon that activated a major tennis revolution for a whole geographic region. Let us dive deeper into what Alex said after her exhausting 3-set victory over Magdalena Frech at the Rome WTA 1000 event. You really need to understand her deeply wired champion brain. Most professional athletes would be celebrating wildly after surviving a grueling marathon match on the incredibly slow Italian clay. They would be thrilled just to advance to the next round. Not Alex. She walked straight off the court, looked her elite coaching team dead in the eye, and delivered a chilling statement. She told them she did not feel tired enough. She was genuinely upset with herself because she felt she had not suffered enough physical pain to truly earn the victory. That specific level of self-criticism is absolutely terrifying for her opponents. It shows a brain completely rewired by the ruthless environment of the Nadal Academy. It is the exact mentality that forces a player to push their physical limits to the absolute edge of human endurance. Other professional players on the tour are starting to notice this terrifying evolution in her game. American star Amanda Anisimova recently expressed complete shock at the massive and electrifying fan base that follows Alex to every single tournament around the world. But this powerful movement is no longer just about one solitary player carrying the weight of a nation. We are currently witnessing the explosive birth of the Sea Sisters phenomenon. Southeast Asia is suddenly rising as a formidable global tennis power after decades of being completely ignored. Indonesian phenom Janice Tijen has also cracked the top 50 of the world rankings. When Alex and Janice teamed up for a historic doubles run in Abu Dhabi, it sent a massive shockwave across their entire home region. They completely transformed an individual breakthrough into a unified regional revolution. Two women from Southeast Asia standing side by side on the same court represents a seismic shift in global sports representation. To truly understand the absolute peak of her respect within the elite tennis community, you just have to look at what happened during the recent offseason. Rafael Nadal was preparing for his highly anticipated return to the sport after a long and painful injury absence. The entire tennis world was watching his every move. Out of every single elite player training at his world-class facility, the legendary 22-time Grand Slam champion personally selected Alex to be his very first practice partner. He recognized her unparalleled work ethic. He saw his own relentless fighting spirit reflected perfectly in her aggressive baseline game. He knew she would push him to the absolute limit. Getting that direct validation from the greatest clay court player in human history is the ultimate badge of honor. That ironclad mindset and elite validation is the only thing keeping her grounded against the insane media pressure flooding Paris right now. But the tennis gods are incredibly cruel. They just handed her the most brutal tournament draw imaginable at Roland Garros. The Roland Garros bracket this year offers absolutely zero favors for the rising star. In fact, it looks like a complete tactical death sentence right from the opening day. Right out of the gate in round one, she faces a massive collision with American teenage sensation Iva Jovic. Jovic is currently sitting at world number 18, and she is playing the absolute best tennis of her young life. She just reached the quarterfinals in Rome and the semifinals in Charleston. This first-round match is packed with incredible psychological tension because these two players know each other perfectly. They actually played doubles together in Auckland just a few months ago. Familiarity breeds a very specific type of competitive anxiety. If you stayed with me this far, I'm going to reward you with a massive tactical secret that the mainstream sports media is completely ignoring right now. During that impressive doubles run in Auckland, Alex had a front row seat to study the exact mechanical flaws of the Jovic serve. Jovic struggles significantly with her second serve placement under extreme pressure. Her ball toss drops slightly lower than usual, and she tends to push the ball directly into the strike zone of a left-handed player. Alex is a lefty with a violently lethal baseline return. If Alex aggressively steps inside the baseline and directly attacks that exact second serve weakness, she can completely neutralize the massive American power game. This is the ultimate chess match, playing out live on the red dirt. If Alex miraculously survives this opening round bloodbath, the path only gets darker and far more dangerous. Waiting in the projected second round is the dangerously consistent American Emma Navarro. Look further down the line and you see absolute titans like Naomi Osaka and the current world number one Aryna Sabalenka waiting to crush any underdog dreams. There is zero margin for error. Every single point will demand absolute precision and unshakable mental strength. Yet this terrifying gauntlet is exactly why thousands of fans are packing the Parisian walkways right now. They did not come here expecting an easy coronation. They came to witness a brutal fight. This journey is no longer just about winning a tennis match. It is about a monumental sociological shift playing out on global television. When a young girl in Manila or Jakarta or an expatriate living in Berlin turns on her screen and sees someone who looks just like her walking onto the legendary court Philippe Chatrier to deafening cheers, the entire world changes forever. It violently shatters the invisible borders of who is allowed to belong at the absolute pinnacle of elite sports. It proves once and for all that the future of tennis is no longer restricted to traditional European and American powerhouses. The upcoming clash with Iva Jovic is the ultimate test of that Nadal DNA flowing through her veins. It is the defining moment that will either validate her miraculous rise or send her back to the brutal drawing board. Can she execute that specific return strategy and pull off another historic upset against a top 20 opponent? You absolutely need to know how this epic battle unfolds. Subscribe right now so you do not miss my immediate breakdown of the match, the second it ends, because this rivalry is going to shape the entire future of the WTA Tour.